is against the customs of his people at this point. Also, when you take a speech like Acts 20, which is in the We material, and it's Paul's one speech to believers, which fits what we have in Paul's letters, there we find considerable correspondences, often even in particular language, even though ancient historians didn't have to get the language just exactly verbatim. That wasn't expected in ancient speeches because you didn't have tape recorders. But sometimes even the language is very similar to Paul's letters. There are differences, but the differences are what we would expect because nobody is saying that Paul wrote the book of Acts. As I mentioned earlier,
so we're coming to the last bit of this. The several liability on guards who permitted a prisoner to escape, Acts 27:42. The local people and superstitions of the day, Acts 20:40, verse 4 and 6. The region as a refuge to wait a southerly wind to carry them through the strait, Acts 28:13. Appi Forum or Tres Turbine, a correctly placed stopping place on the Appian Way, Acts 28:15. Appropriate means of custody with Roman soldiers, Acts 20:16. The conditions of imprisonment, living at his own expense, Acts 28:30-31. Now, all the references to the book of Acts there, all the information that I've just mentioned you, have all been verified either by reading ancient text or by archaeology. So when the book of Acts, all those biblical references that I've made of the book of Acts have been verified by historians today, and verifies the text is not in some kind of mythological or make-believe language, but is actually rooted solidly in history. And I hope that you recognize that when you're reading the book of Acts, you're reading an amazing, fair, honest, solid historian. Luke was someone you could trust.
Historians had not just an agenda to provide historical information. They weren't just writing annals or chronicles. Ancient historiography, by its nature, was meant to teach something. It was meant to give moral or political or theological lessons, and we can illustrate all of those from a wide range of ancient historians: Dionysius of Halicarnassus, Josephus, Tacitus, and so on. The book of Acts, like other ancient historiographic works, was meant to give us information, but not just information. It was information presented in such a way as to teach us something, to teach us how to live. And when you look at the book of Acts, the message there is how God empowered his church to cross all cultural barriers and to bring the good news of Jesus to all the nations. And as somebody who has benefited from that, who was converted to Christianity through other people's witness, I'm grateful for that message. There is a lot of detail in there that's for scholars, but you can isolate that from the main message. I mean, it's structured pretty clearly in terms of headings and paragraphing. So it gives a whole lot of information on each passage, usually on each verse. There's quite a bit of detail. You can extract from that. Obviously, you wouldn't give all of this material in a sermon, but as you're extracting from it, I think you'll find some insights there that you wouldn't get elsewhere because of the great detail that I've tried to go into in reading it in light of other ancient sources.
Okay. Just a little bit of detail about the scholar. Let's give you a bit of detail. The scholar who you heard talking was Keener, an atheist who became a Christian, world authority in some areas of ancient studies of the Book of Acts, for example. So very, very important scholar. But Dr. Colin J. Herman wrote the Book of Acts in the setting of Hellenistic history, and he compares archaeological discoveries of over the last 200 years. And he says that it gives 99.9% confidence level in the verification of Luke's writing. He thinks that the book was written about AD 62, which shows it aligned with the conservative evangelicals. He says, Dr. Herman says, Acts is more closely integrated with contemporary events than any other New Testament book. And he criticizes those who would say that he is not accurate. Dr. Herman would criticize anyone who said the Book of Acts is not accurate based on a bias against the supernatural. So that's just a few bits of information about Dr. Herman. I'll see if I can get any more information. Here's a review of Colin J. Herman's Book of Acts in the setting of Hellenistic history. In every serious Bible student's library, alongside the introductory works and the commentaries of the Book of Acts, there should be a space either filled by or reserved for the Book of Acts in the setting of Hellenistic history. This work by Colin J. Herman is far-reaching, nearly encyclopedic examination of the history of the Book of Acts from a conservative viewpoint that reopens the question of the reliability of the Acts narrative in the process, fires a warning shot across the bow of the ship called Redaction and the rest of the vessels and the liberal historical critical fleet. The author's purpose in writing is to discover whether Acts can be relied upon as history by using a scientific approach. He strives to establish the history of Acts by appealing to reason and evidence, not faith. Some of the criteria he examines includes the types of knowledge demonstrated in the text, evidence from inconsequential details that correlate with known historical parallels between Acts and the epistles of Paul. And if you type in review of Herman's The Book of Acts in the setting of Hellenistic history, you will find some helpful review of the book. Okay, so the whole point of this exercise is to introduce you a little bit to the scholarship on the Book of Acts. We've introduced you to two scholars, and we've given you some basic facts and information about the Book of Acts. So whenever you see a debate between a Christian and an atheist about the resurrection of Jesus, just remember this video. Remember that there's more to it than the skeptics will allow. That there is much going on in the Book of Acts, for example, than skeptics would actually want you to know about. that basically it's really written as history. All right. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.